I speak of the gloom and doom, and you mentioned challenges a number of times. Something that I think there are a number of topics that I think across cities that continue to sort of bubble up. That with all these converging issues,
Mhm.
a lot of people would probably shy away from politics in this
Mhm.
day and age. So I've got a list here of some
Mhm.
common issues that cities
Mhm.
are facing.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on it and how the city's addressing it. The first is affordable housing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I
How
knocked
much
on.
time do we have?
Yeah, yeah, and it is persistent and it is real and it is urgent, right?
Mm-hmm.
I knocked on thousands of doors in our downtown, um, and the number one issue, in the conversations I had and behind those doors was that concern around the availability and the
Yeah.
affordability of housing, right? And that's in the conversations that we have. You also, it's visible, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are seeing it right across our city. It's such an enormous challenge. And what has been really important and exciting for me from the very start of my term has been to demonstrate the city's leadership and our commitment to addressing this crisis, and to continue to kind of turbocharge that with Mayor Chow
Yeah.
coming into the role and into the office.
Right.
And so for me, it is making sure that we are taking a multi-pronged approach, because it is persistent and it's real. And I will tell you that we also didn't get here overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was choices over many years
Yes.
about how to address the housing supply, how to deal with housing affordability, and those were choices that were not necessarily thinking about the future or where it will land right now. So we also know that that addressing this crisis will not happen overnight,
Yeah.
but we do need to put pieces in place that get us on track.
Yes.
So I'm really proud of the last budget that we had at the city that allowed us to do that. The agreements that Mayor Chow was able to secure with the provincial government first and foremost, and the federal government around funding and support on housing, and the leadership that we've shown at the city. So I'll mention two things. First is this really incredible program that we have at the City of Toronto, the multi-unit residential acquisition program. And so one of the things that we know for sure is that you can't just build yourself out of a housing crisis. We also have to protect affordable rental and renters in particular. And this incredible program puts aside money at the city for us to obtain and retain affordable rental,
Yeah.
so that it can stay affordable forever, right?
That's important.
And when I got to City Hall, there was an allotment of $10 million for this program year over year. And in my first budget process, that looked like it was going to be clawed back. And I fought tooth and nail to protect that program, because it's so important for us to be able to get through our housing crisis, but also because the majority of residents in Spadina, Fort York are renters. It's 58% of us, right? And then this year in this budget process, a year later, and with new leadership at the mayoral level, we were able to move forward $100 million investment in the Mura program. And what a
incredible.
difference that will make
amazing.
to address this immediately. We do not have to build anything new. We just have to be able to retain this to make it affordable forever,
Yeah.
so that we can actually see a light at the end of the tunnel
Yeah.
when it comes to making progress on the affordable housing crisis. And alongside that, investing in programs like Rent Safe, in funds where we can help support renters if they are facing eviction, and to kind of support them in some of those stopgaps, and also to be able to support renters in particular access some of the resources and the knowledge that they might need if they're coming up against challenges. The second thing that I'll share is that the city itself is showing leadership about what it looks like to build new in a way that is sustainable for the long haul. So in the budget, we approved 65,000 new rent-controlled units that would be built on municipal land, right? So where we have the power and the controls over what happens there, we are showing that leadership. leadership, right? And so when we're calling on other levels of government to come and join us because we can't do the whole thing alone, it's also demonstrating what we're putting forward, right? And where we have the resources, specifically the space in our city to be able to do that. And what I'm really proud of is that we have a number of sites that are right in our ward that are fast tracked on the plan to actually build affordable. And that has been so exciting to be able to engage local communities in that consultation and in that good news, to be able to also demonstrate, right, that also this isn't something that's just going to be coming years later.
Yeah.
It's things that we're working on right now and that we will see in the next medium term, right? And so that's really, really exciting for me. And it's to make sure that we're keeping up the pressure, the urgency, and we're staying on the right track. And I know that we have to support our neighbors right now as well. We know we know the statistics about how many Torontonians were, thousands of Torontonians are experiencing homelessness. I think our shelter system turns away about 300 people a night, right? And that's just approximate, just depending. And that is something that has to be addressed. And one of the pieces that we also have approved at council is a shelter capital plan. And that means where we are building, a more shelter capacity and making sure that that is spread out across the city, right? Not just concentrated in some neighborhoods.
Right. So more access.
To make sure that people can be and access, safe space whichever part of the city they call home. Yeah. And that's really, really critical. So yes, there's so much to say about affordable housing and shelter, but to be able to at least lift up two main things and some of those additional pieces that we're giving leadership to move that forward. And we know more has to be done, and it is going to be our collective efforts. Yes. I always invite everyone in our communities, if they reach out to us with concerns about housing or homelessness in our community, to be able to address that concern and also say, let's be the strongest advocates to address this issue together, because that is what it's going to take.
Yeah. Great. That was nice and concise.
A lot in there.
Yeah.
There's a lot
a lot going on with that topic. Another big one is mental health. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So one of the roles that I'm really proud to have taken on since the start of the term is to be on the Toronto Board of Health, to be appointed to that. And as part of that, I'm chairing our new implementation strategy for our plan as a city on substance use, mental health, harm reduction, and treatment. And so it's building on work that the city has done over many years to address the issues, particularly around substance use, harm reduction, and treatment. But mental health is an added dimension to that strategy. And it is multi-pronged as well to be able to address that. And it lists out the responsibilities that we have at every level. The city, us as Torontonians, but also the provincial government, the federal government, not-for-profit agencies, healthcare providers. That is what it's going to take for us to be able to address this. One of the big pieces around mental health that I've been really proud for us to move forward has been around the Toronto Community Crisis Response Program, which we just moved forward as the 4th emergency service in the city of Toronto. Great. So if we see people in our community who are experiencing mental health crises, they're at 211. You can call that number and access supports that don't necessarily require police, right? That's great. And, to be able to have that as an important, alternative has been really critical. And we've seen the difference that has made, because Ward 10 has been a place where that service was operating as a pilot over the last year and a bit. Yeah. So being able to see that expanded across the city has been such an important piece of our commitment to addressing mental health in practical ways in the very short and immediate term, to make sure that folks who are in crisis are able to be connected to those supports, and then that support will continue after that moment, right? There are professionals who are going to be checking in, who are going to be helping direct them. And then on the other piece, we have an overarching strategy through Toronto Public Health that we are going to be bringing forward, and providing the regular updates about what we as a city are doing, and how all of the other kind of stakeholders, including other levels of government, have to step up with us.
Yeah.
And it's very serious, right? We know that coming through the pandemic, that mental health has been such a big priority,
Yeah.
and it's across the board in small and big ways, right?
Yeah.
One of the conversations that I had when I was campaigning so often was, we live in a part of the city where we live very close to each other, right? We live in tall buildings, and it's very busy. But, for so many folks, it's also can be really lonely, right?
It's the loneliest
Yeah,
epidemic.
and that also contributes to our level of well-being and our mental health, and that's really important for me to know, for us to be able to address with all the appropriate supports and services in a collaborative way. And then it's also, what do we do to ensure that there is a sense of connection and community, which we know strengthens mental health and strengthens our capability to support each other in the best ways possible.
Yeah. No, that's great. You're right. It is absolutely layered. I'll hold my thoughts and kind of get to the next point, public transit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as a daily transit user, public transit is so critical for me. And one of the commitments that I had made from the very start is our King Street route. I was part of that early work, the consultation, the back and forth about smart street redesign that we saw on King Street.
Yes.
And once it was implemented, we saw that it was like, a low-cost way to make sure that one of our busiest surface transit routes was working better for everyone. That as a public transit rider, you could get across, in a reliable and quick way. And if you were a road user of any other kind, like you understood the rules of the road in order to also be able to get where you needed to go
Admittedly,
in a
I
safe and
sometimes
convenient way.
forget those rules. I've driven down King by accident.
And what has happened over time, and what has been really hard to see, is that without some maintenance and upkeep in terms of even the public education, we've seen some of that smart street redesign fall away, right? And the effectiveness of it alongside that too, right? So one of my big commitments over the last year and a half has been the renewal of what's happening on King Street, to make sure that we continue to make it work well for everyone, transit users, for people who are driving, walking, biking, and make sure it's safe for everybody. And also to renew what we learned from that, right? That you can make these smart choices about how streets are redesigned in order to be more effective. And that was the important example that the King Street redesign kind of provided us when it first was implemented and then made permanent, that King Street pilot. And that's what I think we have to be able to still capture and learn from as we move forward. And what has been really important for me is like that we've seen some of the results of that, making sure that we have traffic agents who are helping ensure that things are moving on King Street, that we're coupling that with public education. And then excuse me, I was just out on King Street over the weekend, helping with some of the street repairs, making sure that some of the bollards and other pieces of infrastructure
you're
there.
filling potholes in your free time.
I wasn't on the pothole team. I was on the bollard and on the pieces that make sure that we can be safely getting on and off of transit. But then that work is really happening, and that's been such a high priority. I'm really glad to see that and to be able to support that alongside Mayor Chow. And one of the really important things that we've heard over and over again from transit users is, safety first and foremost, and also affordability.
Yeah.
And on that affordability piece, I was really proud that in this last budget, there was not an increase to TTC fares. That was a commitment that we held firm to. And the other piece around safety is making sure that there are more, capable transit workers who are on our routes, right? Yes. That are there to support folks, that are there to help direct when routes change, but also that presence is so critical.
That's important,
in terms of adding to that safety. And we know that also coupled with access to, appropriate supports like the Toronto Community Crisis Response, seeing more presence, being able to have routes be more reliable, and ensuring that streetcars and buses are coming with regularity is part of that safety.
Yeah.
And the final thing that we were able to maintain, actually bring up to in terms of its maintenance, was 97% of pre-pandemic service on the TTC, right?
Yeah.
Which is about that regularity and that commitment to
Reliability.
making sure that when you need your bus, your streetcar, and your subway car, you're able to get it at that time, and there's still work to do, right? And we know that even as a regular transit user in our downtown, I'm like, wait a minute, where is that, right? So we're gonna keep moving.
I'm late for the
on
Table
it.
6 podcast.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. I think logistically, when it comes to us as an evolving city and all the moving pieces, as a city of people who walk, cycle, and take public transit. But no, it's a huge matter to really solve and make sense for our city.
And I will just jump in with one small piece, because I know that this is also important. The traffic and congestion is absolutely such an important piece for us to address.
Yes.
And for me, it is making sure that the public transit, the bikeways, being a pedestrian, that those are kind of irresistible ways of getting around the city, where we are making it less and less necessary for folks to be in cars. And, while we are here, that we are, using technology, we're using that good coordination around transportation, closures, construction, to ensure that we're taking traffic and congestion really seriously. It's where I have a lot of conversations. I know it's a shared frustration. It's one of the best kind of pieces of small talk in our downtown sometimes, and we're working hard. And for me especially, it is a priority to address in like that full service way.
Yeah, that bigger comprehensive look at how we sort of resolve all these matters working together. Last topic I have is new immigrants to Toronto.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that has been top of mind for me over the last several months, and I know that the businesses in this area have been a part of alongside us, has been addressing the refugee shelter crisis, right?
Yes.
Right in this neighborhood. We have a center that became a hub for folks who were looking for a safe place to be arriving in Canada, and was something that was really challenging for us in the neighborhood, and especially as a local representative, that that was not acceptable, unconscionable, as a word that I had used to describe that.
Yeah.
And in the face of that, what I saw was incredible community and incredible leadership from folks in this neighborhood. I really do have to credit the Downtown West BIA in the face of that. BIA members showed up and asked, how can we support, right? Can we bring meals, right? Can we help connect people to services? What is it that is needed? And that sense of shared humanity in the face of a crisis is really important, because of course, no one wants to see people in that situation. We also know that it's going to take each of us stepping up, and also making sure that our federal government is stepping up with its fair share alongside the supports the city and the province has to provide. So there is that immediate piece. And I also say that, we have to make sure that isn't something that becomes the norm, right?
No.
And we saw incredible community members, Black churches and Black serving organizations show up in particular to support the refugees who were there. And what I've been really glad that we were able to do was to be able to support them with the resources that they put forward to ensure that in the face of that immediate crisis, that people were safe, secure, and sheltered. And that is really important. And that has spurred on our advocacy as a city to be working alongside the federal government to make sure that they're stepping up with the money that we require to address issues of citizenship and immigration in the city in that space. So there's this kind of immediate crisis that we're seeing, and how can we demonstrate that as a city and as communities about what our response will be, one that is caring, but also one that's accountable, because it's our shared responsibility.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's folks like, when my parents came to Toronto, people who are making the choice to immigrate to Toronto and to Canada and to make it home. And that, that is
that we welcome them.
something that has been defining for this city, right?
Yeah.
That it is a place of like many communities, people with many backgrounds, many experiences coming because they want a better future. They want a different set of opportunities. They want to be able to contribute. And for I know that was so important to my parents, right? They made a choice to come to Canada because it was where they could see a future for themselves and their family that had different opportunities than what they saw for themselves from where the place they originally called home. And that is also a Toronto story, and that's a
Yes.
Canadian story that we need to support. And that means that our city has to address some of the basics. So when we
Yes.
talk about the housing crisis, it's not disconnected from the type of welcoming place that we can be and how we do ensure that that we are a city that can uphold our highest ambitions and our commitment to being a place that where we reflect the world, right? Where we
Yes.
are the world. And that is really important in terms of what the leadership is that the city brings to that. That means that on the front of, pushing back against racism and discrimination, that we give leadership to that. When it comes to making sure that there are supports and services and resources that are, well used and well distributed across the city. And when it comes to the type of communities that we want to be, that prioritize welcoming and that are able to step up and step in to make sure that that we are collectively thriving. That is what's really important to me, and that is something that we have to be able to demonstrate for folks who are calling Toronto home for the first time from somewhere else, and for all of us who are here now as well.
Yeah.
And I will just say one final piece around this, which has been really important to me, is that at every single event or meeting that we have as a city, we always started off with a land acknowledgement, right? Which I think is such a beautiful and important practice. And it's really important for me as a child of immigrants who came from a place that was harmed by colonization, that now being here, having the opportunities, calling Toronto home, it also means that I have a responsibility to be alongside Indigenous communities and the work of truth and justice and reconciliation. And as a city, we have a truth and reconciliation action plan that lays out from local residents to businesses to academic institutions how we actually show up and demonstrate that. And that is also really important in terms of what welcome looks like.
Yes.
And how we bring in newcomers to
Yes.
that story and that responsibility. One of the initiatives that was so cool to be a part of last year was actually work that our Indigenous Affairs Office did with our newcomer office to create a resource for newcomers to Toronto about what its Indigenous history was and also what that action plan looked like and how they could be a part of it. And it was
Yes.
really
That's very
beautiful
cool.
to see communities come together. And that is Toronto at its best.